that. Think about this for a second on Brock Purdy before I bring Jason Cole in. Jason was out there a couple months ago. After the Trey Lance disaster, this guy makes $937. He wins the Super Bowl making less than $1 million, and he's an MVP. The salary cap, he's got 2 years still on this deal for the Niners to deal with. You know, next year I think he can get an extension, and he can end up getting that extension when it comes to prorating out the signing bonus. But the cap will still be there for Lynch. You talk about going from one extreme of losing 3 ones to a guy that saves your cap. I'd rather have my cap not affected than losing 3 ones, because the cap affects the entire 53. It's pretty remarkable. It's utterly remarkable. But before I get to that, I want to start with Cowboys and Eagles with our Hall of Fame voter, Jason Cole. And Jason, I appreciate you coming to the board. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, no problem. What's going on?
All good. Jace, tell me, what was your takeaway from the Eagles and the Cowboy game?
Eagles look tired. They look tired and banged up. That's I don't know how they get it back, but they're not the same team that was winning, 5 straight and winning some close games and beating up on some teams physically. I don't quite understand it. It's like such a big swing in level of effort, big swing in demeanor. I don't know if the 49ers game got into their heads a little bit defensively, but it's really more of an effort thing. And I'm not saying they're not trying hard. I think that even when they're trying hard, they're just not there. They're not pounding people the way they were in the first 10, 11 games of the season.
How about this, Jace? There's a statistic out there that teams that play the Niners the week after are 1-26 when they play them. And, it's a residual effect. And I think, like you said, they beat the starch out of them so much, not only physically, but mentally, because then you get second guessing going into that Cowboy game. And it just looked like a ton of second guessing from Philly. And like you said, they just looked like they weren't prepared. And Dallas looked like world beaters.
Right. I mean, look, the Eagles just didn't look sharp. I haven't looked up that stat on teams after the fact with the 49ers, but that's interesting. And to see the quality of how they play, I'd like to dig a little deeper into that stat to analyze what it means. It's impressive, or depressive if you're on the flip side of that, right? But here, the bottom line is the Eagles, as they have played the last 2 weeks, are not anything like they did play in the first 11 games. The question going forward is, how does Sirianni get that back? Because, they're banged up. They've got injuries. Everybody's got some of that. Everybody's got attrition. The question is, how do you get healthy over the last 4 games so that you're ready to go into the playoff race? Because, look, as good as I think the 49ers are right now, and they're the best team in football, they've proved it on the field, okay, as much as I truly believe that. If you don't have Trent Williams lined up at left tackle, it's a whole different game, because that's the biggest single injury that impacted them during their 3-game losing streak was Trent Williams. Talk about Deebo Samuel all you want. Talk about the rib injury that McCarthy was dealing with for a couple of weeks. Talk about that all you want. Not having Trent Williams changes everything that they do in how they run their football team.
Don't you agree right now, Jace? Identities are set with NFL teams heading into week 15. Like what you, and I'm going to expand on what you're saying. These next 4 games, this is where we talk about the war of attrition. Because if the Niners lose a guy, are we sold on Dallas's metal? Can they run through Detroit, Miami, and Buffalo this weekend? Can they get it back in Philly? Injuries are not really a part of the issue. Well, some in the secondary on their defenses, but this is more about where we are in the season on war of attrition, right?
Yeah, look, the 17-game season, has really drastically changed to me the highs and lows of what this, and more so than you would just say, okay, we're going to go from 16 to 17. We're adding, just one more game. It has had a much bigger effect to me on how you run your football team over the long haul, because like football is not is not supposed to be a long season sport, right? Like,
yeah,
it's supposed to be a 3 or 4 month thing. You get in, you get out. Now it's becoming a 6-month operation if you're going to go from start to finish in a season to try and win the whole thing, right? And putting your body through a meat grinder for 6 months, that's really, really hard. And I think it exacerbates the up and downs of what happened in even in a 16 game, as I said. So it is about, are you going to get hot? It is about, are you going to get healthy? Are you going to avoid injuries? All those things are really important here in the last 4 games of the season. And that's why when people talk about Miami and say, oh, they don't have any signature wins and they collapsed on a Monday night against Tennessee, they're a lot closer than you think to being a potential Super Bowl team than you want to necessarily believe. Because they've just, if they can get their offensive line healthy and just get one game, like if they can come in and beat Dallas and all of a sudden the switch flips for the Dolphins and they start to really believe in their own hype, right? Like if something like that happens over the last 4 games of the season, I see them raking a run to the Super Bowl. And we wouldn't have talked about that a month ago with the Dolphins. We would have said, okay, well, they're kind of cool and interesting, but, they're the Dolphins. They're soft, right? After the...
I can't hear you, Jace. Can't hear you. Okay. Yeah. Having a little issues there with Jason Cole there too. So we're going to hopefully be able to get back there. How you doing? Be able to get back to Jason Cole here. Hopefully we are able to get him back here up and running here, because I love what he was saying about the scenario there with how long this season is. Jason, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, hey, that's a great point. Please expand on it.
No, I just think that with the long season, you just get more ups and downs. And again, I think that the last month of the season becomes,
Jason, can't hear you. Okay, hopefully we're able to catch up again with him and we can hear him get his takes. He's got some really great stuff going on right now. I'll say this to you, and I'm going to bring this up with Jason Cole here when we get him back here. I wonder if the NFL needs to expand the rosters and add another bye week, and to be able to help these teams out. And I want to see what Jason says. Hey, Jace, let me expand on this. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. It just keeps getting kicked backstage.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this, Jace. Do you think the NFL, after what you've seen, and I completely agree with you 100%, Jace, do you think that the NFL needs another bye week and maybe expand the rosters?
Bye week, yes. I think that they should. What the most important thing to me is when you play on a Thursday game, you should have a bye going into the Thursday game, right? Like you should have 10 days off before that game, and you should basically have 9 days off after that game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like they should build that in and expand the season. Now they're going to counter by saying that decreases the inventory too much on the season, and it makes it too hard to have enough quality games during any given weekend. And I understand that point to a certain extent, but I think that the Thursday games kill teams.
Yeah. So do the Europe games.
Europe games, that's not going away. The Europe games never go away.
No, they're expanding them actually.
Right, because there's just too much money to be made overseas. So that you're going to have to live with that. Where I think that the issue is, how do you mitigate the effects of the Thursday night games?
Jace, before I get to San Francisco, let me ask you, Dak Prescott. I mean, how about this? How impressed with you? I mean, Brady, it took him 7 years to win an MVP. Dak's in his ninth. And here he is, I mean, playing probably the best football that he's played in his entire career since he's been a Cowboys starter. Give me your sense how do you look at him right now? Is he playing the best quarterback of any quarterback in the NFL right now?
I think
Or is it
statistically,
Purdy?
well, Purdy's Purdy's out
He
of
is.
his mind. I mean, like he's first in every category.
How about this,
statistically.
Jace? Jace, let me give you this stat with Purdy. Do you know that the Niners are 22nd in passing attempts and they're third in passing yards?
There, let me add to that. There are only 4 teams in the league. There's 2 stats I'm going to give you from that I looked up this week. There are only 4 teams in the league that have rushed more than they have passed this year. Like, and the 49ers are one of those 4. Atlanta is in there. I think Baltimore is there, and I can't remember the 4th team, but it's an also ran. It's not a competitive team. So they play more like a classic 70s, 80s kind of team.
So you're telling me that, wait a minute, the 49ers have had more rushing attempts than passing attempts?
That's literally true. And
unbelievable.
Here's the second part of it is they've run the 5th fewest offensive plays in the entire league. Okay, so here's this team that has all these different weapons, and all those guys are playing well. Debo's playing great. McCaffrey's playing great. Kittle's playing great. Ayuk's playing out of his mind. He's playing, he's going to get a big contract. Purdy's playing great, right? So we talk about all these different weapons, right? And you would think in that scenario, you want to run more plays because you want to get the ball in the hands of your guys more often and keep them happy, right? They do just the opposite. They run fewer plays and they're more efficient. And part of that is, look, they jump on top of people, they get leads early, and then they're running clock from there on. And I get that. But it's almost like, and you'll get this remark, I'm not sure how many of your listeners will, it's like Kyle Shanahan is channeling more of Dan Reeves in certain ways than his old man, right? Yeah. And you would never have imagined that. I mean, but they are so incredibly efficient with how they run their offense. But it's precarious. Look, it's precarious. I always come back to Trent Williams better be there, and you better have a lead, because Brock Purdy, as good as he is, and he's playing MVP caliber football. I'm not saying he is the MVP. It might be McCaffrey on the team. As good as Purdy is playing, okay, if you take away a few things, he does not have the arm strength to outthrow people. Like, he cannot be Patrick Mahomes and outthrow people on a consistent basis. It's just not going to happen.
Don't you agree when you're talking that kind of stuff? And I know how you look at the MVP, you look at the end of the year, but man, I'll say this to you. This is why Dak, in my opinion, is the front runners, because McCaffrey and Purdy are going to take votes away from themselves. And people are going to look at both those guys and figure out quarterback's more important. Hey, McCaffrey's more important. Hey, Trent Williams, he may be the most important player in the huddle, period. And then you look at Dak, and that's where Dak parachutes in, because there's really nobody else that's in that conversation in Dallas, not even CeeDee Lamb. And that's why I say Dak's got to be considered right there for that award.
Look, Dak's having as good a season as he can possibly imagine. Tip your cap to Dak Prescott, having a marvelous, marvelous season. And I still think that Jalen Hurts, pound for pound, and depending on what they do, I like Jalen Hurts more. I like Patrick Mahomes more. But certain guys have seasons where they just take over, right? And they just, Rich Gannon was an MVP. He had a season where he just was magical for that entire year. Dak Prescott's having one of those years. And it's coming at a time when, Jalen Hurts is banged up and Philly's kind of drifting a little bit right now. It's coming at a time when Patrick Mahomes doesn't have weapons and the Chiefs are drifting a little bit. But, okay, that doesn't mean I'm not going to vote for Dak Prescott. He would be up there in the top 3 or 4 guys that I would consider at this point in time.
Let me go more into San Francisco here with you then. I mean, boy, I'll tell you something. And as I brought you on, I know you were listening when I said that. Can you imagine the saving grace of having lost 3-1s in your future and then landing on that pod known as Brock Purdy is like landing on the Brady pod. I mean, and he's one round less. I looked at his 18 games, Jace. In his 18 NFL games, he's thrown for 5,000 yards, basically a season now. This is what we have as a sample size now. He's 70% completion percentage. This guy's had a better start to his career than anything or anybody in the history of the Niner quarterbacks. Now, again, Montana didn't have
he's had a
plethora of those guys, but I mean, this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, you compare it to like Marino's first basically year and a half in the league.
But Marino was the 28th pick.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. Like, Purdy's that good as the last pick in the draft. It's pure magic. Yes. Like, as bad a luck as the 49ers have had in recent years with injuries, and yes, they picked the wrong guy, or they picked a guy in a draft where there wasn't a guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, Trevor Lawrence, I think, is a good quarterback. There's more to be written on his career. Jacksonville took the right guy in that draft. Zach Wilson, no. Trey Lance, no. Mac Jones, no. Who was Justin Fields? There may be something, but I'm not. If I'm the Bears, I'm not picking up the fifth-year option on. Yeah, I'm done. Okay, but if like when you look at it all, like the 49ers shouldn't have made the trade up. They shouldn't have panicked. If they had sat there and waited, they might have gotten Mac Jones, and that wouldn't have cost them the 3-1s. The whole thing that we talk about, right? But they've drafted so well in so many other areas, acquired players in other areas, parlayed their draft picks into guys like McCaffrey and now Chase Young. And then, yes, they got extraordinarily lucky. It's a once in 25 years pick. Like, if the last Brock Purdy is doing things on par with what, Tom Brady did, what Dan Marino did, from the position of being a 7th round pick, right? Now, he hasn't won a title yet. Brady won titles. That's a huge difference. Marino set all sorts of records, slight difference, and all that. But yeah, they've gotten an amazing find in Brock Purdy. And I could spend weeks talking about how good that guy is.
And I tell people this, everyone's like, well, Montana had all the. I go, no, he didn't. He had Freddie Solomon, Henry Cooper. Had guys like that, Wendell Tyler. When they won their first Super Bowl.
Earl Cooper, but yeah.
Earl Cooper, okay. Hey.
I mean, and Dwight Clark, like, everybody likes to talk about Dwight Clark like he was a superstar. He was a big, slow wide receiver.
Yeah,
right?
He was Jason Witten before Jason Witten.
Well, he wasn't even, he was faster than Jason Witten because he was a wide receiver, really. But yeah, he's a 4'6", 4'7" guy, who just knew how to run routes. And he was a big dude who happened to make, one of the 2 or 3 biggest plays in the history of football. I'll give him that. He was at the receiving end of that. But he was not like Jerry Rice or John Taylor. Let's not kid ourselves. Yeah.
I want a couple last questions for you, Jace. I got a quote here that I want to get your opinion on here. So I saw this quote from Kareem Jackson, the defensive back from the Denver Broncos, who's been suspended. And he said that he had his meeting with the commissioner, and the commissioner said this to him. He says, you have to protect, this is a quote, you have to protect the offensive players. And then he responded to the commissioner, Mr. Commissioner, I'm not sure how. And then the commissioner said, well, you've got to play within the rules. And then he responded and said, so it's a defensive player's responsibility to protect the offensive players? And the commissioner said, yes. I mean, Jace, you're asking a defensive player now as the commissioner of the league, and no wonder the officiating looks so one-sided in games. You're asking defensive players not only that they can't play defense in certain ways, now you're saying you have to look out for the offensive players?
Well, let's just say this. That's Kareem Jackson's version of the conversation. All right. I'd like to have.
Fair.
Okay, I would like to have heard what Roger really said. And there's a difference between what Roger said and how the player wants to hear it.
Or maybe how he heard it.
Right, exactly how he heard it, and because I hear the same thing from other defensive players. Oh, I've got to put myself at risk, but not put the offensive. I hear that kind of stuff, and maybe Roger did say it, and that's not the most eloquent way of trying to deliver the message. I don't know. Like,
you're not buying it.
I'm not necessarily buying it, but I'm also saying I understand that, defensive players are the ones who are allowed to hit like that. They're allowed to tackle. And there is a responsibility that goes within hitting. I can't give you free range to just hit however you want. You can't lead with the helmet. We can't spear people. We can't, do certain things. And you've got to learn those techniques. Is that for the safety of the players? Yes. Okay. It is for the safety of players. Is it specifically for the safety of offensive players? No, it's about the guy you're going to hit, but it's also protecting yourself too. I don't want you, I don't want you to lead with your head because I don't want you to get concussions. Like, part of this is on the players. When the players sue the league and over CTE, which they were in the right to do, the league's going to respond with, okay, now you have to create rules that protect the players and limit the defenders. All right. You've put me in this position. Okay. If you're going to tell me I'm liable for how you play, I'm going to have to create rules that safeguard you and safeguard the offensive guys and the defensive guys. That's the position you put me in by suing me. All right. And all of that's fair. So but these are the reactions, these are the actions, reactions of players in the league to what happens both on the field and in the court of law and in the process of running this game. And it's really super complicated. And so Kareem Jackson may have heard that. He may believe that he heard it. Roger may have delivered it in a way that's like that. The bottom line is there are rules that restrict how defensive players can tackle and hit offensive players. And they are there, yes, for safety reasons, for both the safety of the offensive guys and the defensive guys.
Have you been surprised by Mike McCarthy this year? I mean, Jason, that looks like a different dude coaching that team. And look, I think D'Amico Ryans and maybe Shane Steichen, those are going to be your 1 and 2 guys for Coach of the Year. Probably D'Amico because of the nightmarish scenario down in Houston. That was down there in that organization. But still, you coached the Packers and the Cowboys, 2 of the biggest brands in NFL history, and he's won at both places. I mean, how about this? I'm not going to say is he the Coach of the Year or a candidate for it. I'm going to ask you this. Has he changed the narrative that Aaron Rodgers had on him when he was with him up there in Green Bay? Has he changed that narrative that he's a good coach?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a good coach in Green Bay. Now, Aaron took him to task and belittled him a lot and leaked stories out and all these other kinds of things, which makes me laugh about when Aaron Rodgers is, throwing stones at the organization going, we've got too many leakers and too many voices. Like, Aaron, really? You're complaining about people leaking information? You of all people?
Right.
Like, come on, man. But to get back to your original point, you don't win a Super Bowl without being some kind of a quality coach. And you don't win as consistently as McCarthy won in Green Bay with both Brett Favre and with Aaron Rodgers without being a quality coach. Are you a Hall of Fame coach because of that? Not necessarily, no. But now you go to Dallas, and some of the criticisms that you received, you started to change. But I think the most important thing that's happened with Mike McCarthy this year is he's actually coaching the team.
Yeah.
He's coaching the offense. He's not managing the team and allowing Kellen Moore to call plays. Because when you hire guys like Mike McCarthy, you hire them to call plays and run an offense. And the marriage of him with Kellen Moore was one that did not work because philosophically, those guys were so different in how they wanted to run the team. Now you're running the team the way that McCarthy wants to run it. Yes, McCarthy's gotten very fortunate in that they played a lot of games against weaker teams, were able to build up a lot of momentum, were able to, pound some people into submission, which has made it simpler. And now they've got this momentum going into the second half, which they may parlay into something really, truly great and really, truly special. All right, we'll see. But I think the most important thing is he's in charge.
Yeah.
He's determining his future. He's doing what he wants to do. And that's a lot different than the first couple of years in Dallas.
I have to ask you this here, and you've covered this game so long, and you'll have the perspective here. You go back, and because also you're the Hall of Fame voter. I mean, Hallis ended poorly. Shula ended not with a lot of winning. Landry didn't end with a lot of winning. These guys that stay so long, it never ends well because you're vilified if you stay too long. Remember, Walsh used to say, Jason, 10 years is a window for a coach, and if you stay any longer than that, you're really going to end up being vilified in the end of the whole thing here. I mean, are you buying these reports that are coming out of Boston that there's already a preconceived? You are buying it that Belichick will be leaving New England at the end of the year?
If Tom Curran, I know Tom Curran for a long time, and he's covered that team for 25 years or something like that, whatever it's been. Tom knows his way around that building. Tom's not reporting that unless he knows it's going to be true. So I trust the source where it's coming from. Yeah, could things change? Sure, something could change. I don't think it's going to change. I think that there has always been a tension between Kraft and Belichick that has been managed better by Kraft than by Belichick because Belichick wants things done his way.
You think it started with Garoppolo?
Oh, it started way back in
Deflategate, that stuff.
It started Spygate, man. I mean, look, there's still that story from the owners' meetings when Belichick. It was in Palm Beach at the Breakers Hotel when Belichick was supposed to get up and apologize for the first Spygate, and he just mumbled and fumbled his way through this half apology, half. It was just BS, right? It was typical kind of Bill thing. And it was so bad that Kraft had to get up and basically finish the apology for him, right? And after that, one of the other owners looked at Kraft and said, "How long are you going to put up with this?" And Kraft's answer was, "As long as he wins."
Well, as a Hall of Fame voter, is he a first ballot?
Oh, no doubt. Come on, that's too many pelts on the wall. Like we can poke holes in Bill Belichick all we want and say he didn't win without Brady. Most coaches don't win without somebody, right?
No, every coach had a guy.
Yeah, I mean the argument is he the greatest coach of all time?
That's what here. Let me stop you here. Lombardi, Shula, Noel, is he better than them?
Yeah, I think he's better than them because he won in a cap era and when the league was 32 teams and its most competitive. But he also won as a defensive coordinator, and I think he did some extraordinary things as a defensive coordinator that I'll give him a lot of credit for. Not that Noel didn't do that or that Landry wasn't a great defensive coordinator before coming to Dallas. I just think it's a different league. It's a much more competitive league right now because of the salary cap. Look, to me, the guy who gets overlooked in all this is Joe Gibbs.
3 different quarterbacks.
Like
non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
No, but think about that. Yeah, none of them are Hall of Fame quarterbacks, right? But here's the thing: he made the quarterback position an interchangeable part. Nobody makes the quarterback position an interchangeable part. That's an amazing thing to do.
You know what I think he did, Jace? I think he expanded from George Allen, what George Allen did. And when Bobby Beathard came in there, who had already had some success in Miami and Kansas City, when those guys started putting pieces together from other teams and the interchangeable parts like that, I think Beathard, in my opinion, I knew Bobby before he passed. He lived in San Diego. When Beathard and him got together, in my opinion, That may have been the greatest dynamic between head coach and general manager on changing the landscape in the face of your team year in and year out with the turnover of anybody in pro football history. Because like you said, it didn't matter if it was Theismann, Williams, Rippon. It had no bearing on really what the 13 or 12 win season would be in Washington. They were always great in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They drafted well. They evaluated in free agency. There's no coincidence that Joe Gibbs is like a superstar NASCAR guy. I mean, everything he touches, he's great at it.
Yeah, and he works so hard at it. I would say the other thing that I would add to that is that Gibbs also expanded upon Coryell and his offense in a way that highlighted the running game.
That's right.
More than Coryell did, because it's really Coryell's design, but it's Coryell's design with a far upgraded running attack. Okay, with one where we're going to punish you with the run, and we're going to incorporate the shorter pass. Whereas Coryell was, I'm going to attack you with the longer stuff, because 60s and 70s football was about getting out and getting deep. And the way that, it's slightly different era, slightly different philosophies, but it's the same attack. But it's taking those ideas and expanding them sort of the same way that Kyle Shanahan has taken a lot of his dad's ideas, which were stolen from Walsh, obviously, and the 49ers, when he was at the 49ers, he's taken those ideas and he's added a more dynamic run element, and a different kind of run element to what his dad did. Using heavier offensive linemen, not little guys.
Last question. Do you have a different opinion today of Belichick than you did 5 years ago?
The only thing that I think was he wasn't wise about the end here. And I say that, and I just thought of this in the last couple of days. Like, there are certain guys.
That's a great take.
You wanted control of the team, and you couldn't work it out with Tom. And they're still going to be the greatest duo of all time, right?
Oh yeah.
And like I always tell people, most groups dissolve, right? Like the Rolling Stones are the Rolling Stones are an exception, mostly because they're run by one guy, and Keith Richards just kind of goes along for the ride, right? And the other guys go along for the ride. It's really a one-man show. So, but when you're talking about two people, it's hard to keep two people together. And I think that I go back and I think to myself, Billy, if you just let Tom play it out for 2 or 3 more years and give him the weapons that he needed and let him run the team. And yeah, he was a pain because he was not showing up all the time and he had his trainer. If you had just tolerated that for a couple of more years, you'd have gotten more time to fix this and turn it around, and you would have been a graceful exit. This way, he's been given a fair amount of grace already, but it would have been longer, and I think it would have gone down easier, and he wouldn't have been put on a pedestal where it's like, well, we expect you to fix this right now, and you got one quarterback that you drafted in order to fix it, and we don't care about your bridge year with Cam Newton anymore. Like, your third year with Mac Jones, it's out, it's gone. Like, this would have been a little bit longer. And I think that was unwise. But it's Bill. And Bill believes in himself. And he should. I don't blame him for believing in himself. But at this point became to his detriment.
I want to sneak one more in on you here about the Patriot job. Once he leaves, is that a good job?
You got an owner who cares.
You got a lot of building to do, and then you got top five pick. Maybe it's easier to replace this version of Belichick than it would have been 5 years ago.
Sure.
To replace it. So maybe what Belichick has actually done in his own failures has made that move a lot easier for Kraft, because that guy coming in now, you're not replacing that guy coming off a Super Bowl win.
Well, there's still gonna be some comparisons, and people are still gonna wax poetically about, the greatest of Belichick and all those kinds of things, right?
Oh, no, New England fans still think they're going to win the Super Bowl next year, probably. No,
well, they probably still think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, but
right.
But we got a streak in us. We got a streak in us. We can do it now, Danny.
Yeah.
But look, and some of them believe that Belichick can probably still survive this, which I just think is the wrong. But let's just put it this way: if you have an owner who knows football well enough, which I think the Crafts do, and who cares and wants to win, and you have a top 3 or 5 pick, whatever it happens to be, those are 2 pretty great building blocks. If I can get the right quarterback, either Caleb Williams or Drake May, or maybe it's the Jaden Daniels kid.
I go get Kirk Cousins.
But I think you have to pay too much money for Kirk Cousins. I'm not. And look, as much as I like Kirk Cousins, I'm not paying $50 million a year for him.
He'd be a pretty good bridge, though.
I don't think he can handle the pressure in Boston. I don't think he's built for Boston. I just don't. Boston's different, man. Like Boston is. Boston has got some Philly to it.
Yeah.
That there's not much forgiveness in Boston if you don't ball out. And Kirk's fine. Kirk should just be like, I'm staying in Minnesota.
Hey, Jace, you got a 2-year, you got a 2-game window in Philly and a 2-game window in Boston. You suck after 3. Hey, get him out of here.
Right. And some guys can bow up to that. And some guys can't. And I don't think Kirk Cousins can bow up to that. Especially with add on to the pressure. When I say he's going to get $50 million a year, he's going to get $50 million a year.
Kirk Cousins?
Who else are you buying? How many teams? Put it this way. Make a list of teams that need quarterbacks.
Oh, shit, half the league.
And make a list of how many guys are available.
Half the league needs quarterbacks.
Right. And how many guys are available? 2? 3?
So that means Dak at the end of this year is going to get and highest paid. He'll be the highest paid quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
They'll give him $55 million.
60. If he wants it.
60? Oh, my God.
It's going to be crazy.
You think Dak gets $60 million at the end of the year if he keeps trending? If he lands that team in the NFC title game, which I'm predicting, Jerry pays him 60.
Yeah. I'd ask for it. I wouldn't be afraid. Because who else are you going to pay, Dan?
Kurt.
and if I'm him, I'm asking for 55. Right?
Holy cow, man. These guys, no wonder they don't bitch and hold out.
Well, the money.
Why would you bitch and hold out when someone's giving you a paycheck of $150 million a year?
Well, 50 million or 60 million,
okay.
but they're going to write a big check up front. It's just, look, it's going to happen, man.
You think Kirk Cousins gets $50 million a year?
Yeah.
Wow, man, I hate the NFL today.
Oh, you were born at the wrong time, But
I'm going to slap my mom. Jace, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Our good friend, Hall of Famer, Jason Cole. I thank you very much. Let's get into the power hour here. Hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Eat chicken wings, buy Hooters things. Christmas is near. Shop, have a beer. Christmas shopping shouldn't be hard. Give your friends a Hooters gift card.
This year, stuff their stockings and yours too with a one-size-fits-all gift card. Buy a $25 Hooters gift card and receive a $5 Santa's bonus card. Make it Hooters for the holidays.
Eat chicken wings, buy Hooters things. Christmas is near. Gift cards are here. Good at Hooters everywhere now. Hooters.